So welcome to This Is Not a Drill. We've had a little bit of technical difficulty. I guess it gives meaning to our name. This is not a drill, right? And so for the last 30 minutes or so, we've been trying to make use of our technology. We normally go live on Facebook, but Facebook is not cooperating with us this evening. Every Thursday night, we have really important conversations about what's happening around issues related to Black Lives Matter. And today, what we want to talk about is SB 731, Senate Bill 731, a really important bill. Black Lives Matter almost never co-sponsors legislation, but this bill is really important because it speaks directly to what has happened to our loved ones. This bill is named in honor of Kenneth Ross Jr. Many of you have been with us for the last more than 2 years as we've tried to struggle for justice in the name of Kenneth Ross Jr., who was murdered in Gardenia's Rowley Park by an officer, Michael Robbins, in his 4th shooting. We have with us tonight fantastic guests, including, and most importantly, Kenneth Ross Jr.'s mother, Sister Fuzia Almaru, who's become a tremendous voice in this movement. And so we want to remember and always uplift that the work that we do is in the name of real people. And I know Kenneth is a real person. He's Sister Fuzia's son. And we're grateful that Sister Fuzia was able to join us today. She's had a really tough day. And it's been a really tough 2 and 4 month 2-year and 4-month journey. And you know, Sister Fuzia, we can't make it better, but we can struggle alongside you. And we're grateful that you're here with us today. So if you don't mind, and I know, you know, we've talked, I know that today has not been easy for you. And no day is easy for you, but this one has been particularly rough. So if you're willing, as much as you're willing to share, will you please tell us about Kenneth and tell us about what happened to Kenneth?
Yes, Melina, and thank you. Thank you for having me. I am the mother. My name is Miss Fuzia Almaru. I'm the mother of Kenneth Ross Jr. He was murdered April 11th, 2018. There was a call that there was an altercation between my son and another gentleman, and gunshots were fired. It was around 2:30 in the afternoon. My son was walking down Van Ness Avenue in Gardena by a park, Raleigh Park in Gardena, and a police car had approached him. And when that police car approached him, I guess they had words, and the car went off, drove off. And then some other cars started coming, and all of a sudden there was a bunch of cops. My son got scared. He began to run. He ran across the street where the park is at, and he knew that something bad was about to happen. As he was running, they all gathered around him, and there was about, I don't know how many cop cars by then, 5 or 6, and a bunch of cops. They were going to taser him, the ones that were around him. And what ended up happening is one particular officer by the name of Michael Robbins set up an AR-15 military assault weapon on the police car, and he shot my son in his back and shot 2 other times after that. And he used the AR-15 military assault weapon to shot him in his back, and my son collapsed to the ground and died. And after that, they even tried to handcuff him. They said that it was in self-defense, and he had a gun, and they were scared and this and that. But come to find out, they kept the video thinking that I would hush and I wouldn't fight for the justice of my son. So when 2 years had passed by, I've been fighting along with Melina Abdullah, Black Lives Matter, and my attorney, and we finally got the video. When the video came out, it showed that Kenneth was running for his life. He did not have a gun. He was not a threat to anyone. And this officer murdered him in cold blood. After this was done, I got the police report stating that actually the gentleman was shooting at Kenneth first, and supposedly Kenneth was shooting back. The video goes all the way back to the store, which was a block or so from the park where he initially ran through, and there's no video of Kenneth shooting anyone. So it was all a setup, it was all a cover up. And like I said, it took 2 years, a little over 2 years to even get the video that showed Kenneth running for his life, and this white supremacist racist cop that murdered my son told everybody to shut off the cameras, and this is going to be a good one, which was published on YouTube. So my son was innocent. He had no threat to anyone, and he was murdered in cold blood at 2:30 in the afternoon by a white supremacist cop that was never, ever prosecuted, fired, or anything. The district attorney, Jackie Lacey, it came to her office and it was being investigated. It took about, I'd say, a year and a half. And they decided not to prosecute the cop that murdered my son, even though they initially had the video before I ever got a hold of it, and it was able to be published on YouTube. So that's my story. I'm very, very angry. I'm very, very emotional, but I will not ever stop fighting for my son, Kenneth Ross Jr., because he didn't deserve this. No one deserves to die by the police. And who are they to say that he was armed when he wasn't? And then the cop has not even been prosecuted nor fired. So I'm honored that the senator of Gardena is willing to put Kenneth Ross's name on a bill that's passing that lets no other cops that have murdered or killed anyone work for any other law enforcement. So this particular officer, I believe, killed 3 or 4 other people, and he still was never held accountable for any of the other murders, nor my son, Kenneth.
Sister Fuzia, thank you for sharing that with us. And we know that one of the things that they've tried to do is assassinate Kenneth's character after they stole his body, after they stole his life. I know from talking to you and from meeting his son and from being around his siblings that Kenneth meant a lot to the world. Can you just tell us a little bit about who Kenneth was and is, what his spirit means, and who he was in life?
Yes. Kenneth is a very kind, loving young man. He's very spiritual. He is my eldest son out of 6 children. I had him when I was 18 years old. So we grew up together. We've been through a lot of things together. He's been nothing but kind to his mother. He's always had my back. He's helped me with my other siblings. He's wanted nothing but the best for myself, his siblings, and his son. And he's one of the greatest persons you will ever meet. He's definitely God's child. We're all God's children, but there was something very special about Kenneth. And our connection was very, very deep. And I know that he is the light in my life, and I was the light in his life. And he was the light amongst other people. He was always looking out for people, caring for people, and he was always doing everything in his best interest to protect his family. He was very protective of his family, and of course myself, his mother, since day one.
Yes. We want to say his name. This is how we honor and summon him into this space. Do we want to say his name 3 times? Say his name.
Kenneth Ross.
Kenneth Ross Jr.
Say his name.
Kenneth Ross Jr.
Say his name.
Kenneth Ross Jr.
Senator Bradford, I'd love to bring you into this conversation because we've been struggling for justice in the name of Kenneth Ross Jr. for some time, for almost 2.5 years now. And we often say that we can struggle for justice in their names, but we can't get justice for them. We can get justice for folks who are walking after Kenneth, right? And your bill, SB 731, the Kenneth Ross Jr. Police Decertification Bill of 2020, is written to really honor Kenneth's life and also make his life mean something for those of us who are still here, right? Preserve the lives of those who are still here in his name. People don't really understand what decertification is. Can you talk with us about why you've authored this bill, SB 731, this decertification bill, and what it means to decertify police?
Well, first, thank you, Dr. Tula, for putting this together, and Black Lives Matter for all the important work that you have done and continue to do in our community. And let me extend my heartfelt condolences to Mrs. Fazia and the loss of her son. And this is personal to me in many ways because I grew up at Raleigh Park. I could walk to Raleigh Park right now. I live right around the corner from Raleigh Park. I grew up playing sports there. I coached there for 16 years. I hosted jazz festival there for 17 years right there at Raleigh Park. So this is home to me. And when I heard from many of the young folks, I didn't know Kenneth personally, but I knew young folks in the community that knew him. And this deeply troubled me because I was the first African-American elected to Gardena City Council. And I had to support the Gardena Police Department when I ran 20-something years ago. And today, I have lived in Gardena longer than the oldest officer in that department. And when I heard about this officer, it was an officer I did not know because we grew up in that community knowing the police officers in Gardena. So this was troubling to me. So SB 731 is a bill that I think is long overdue. It gives an independent group the right to review horrible shootings, horrible killings as we've witnessed here, and allow officers to be fired, not just fired, but not rehired, to lose their post certification. Because as we well know, an officer, just as the one who participated in this shooting, this was not his first shooting. And we have plenty of examples, just like we've seen in Minneapolis with Officer Chauvin, who that wasn't his first incident of killing someone or being physically abusive to someone. This prevents these individuals from being rehired by other departments. And really, it's a cyclical life that exists for police officers. If they are ever brought to justice and fired, they're allowed to be rehired at other departments. So decertification would no longer allow an officer once deemed to acted inappropriately, out of line with police policy, to be rehired at another agency. Because currently today, you could do exactly what you did, exactly what this officer did in Orange County, and get hired by another department. And we want to make sure we end this, what I call wash, rinse, and repeat cycle of police brutality that has existed in this country for far too long.
I'm talking on mute. Thank you, Senator Bradford. And we're grateful because you made a pledge to Sister Fuzia that this bill was going to be in the name of her son, that it was going to be meant to honor her son. And we know you've been fighting for this bill. We want to bring Sister Sheila into the conversation because, as you know, Black Lives Matter does not normally co-sponsor legislation. But this bill is so important because, as you've said, police are able to, California is one of very few states where police are able to kind of hop around after they've killed somebody or committed serious acts of misconduct. They can be fired from the city of Orange and then go get a job in the city of Gardena. And that, you know, is if had that not happened, Kenneth may very well still be with us. And so, Sister Sheila, can you talk about why this is, I believe, just the third bill in the life of Black Lives Matter that we've ever co-sponsored? Can you talk about why it was important for us to come on to this bill?
Absolutely. So this bill was incredibly important because, as you mentioned, most states have a decertification process. Actually, California is one of 5 states that doesn't. 45 other states have a decertification process. And it's incredibly important for us to keep our communities safe and keep Black people safe by getting police officers who kill people off of the streets. Because we know in the case of Kenneth Ross Jr. and so many of the other families that we organize with and work with, that oftentimes their loved ones were killed by an officer who killed somebody else.
Well, you don't talk like you write. Always.
I'm trying to keep it brief.
Sheila always laugh about how brevity is not her strong suit. There we go, though. So James, up north, a lot of folks always ask us, you know, well, where is your Bay Area chapter? And we always say we don't have a Bay Area chapter, but we have a Bay Area sister organization, and that's the Anti-Police Terror Project. We get down together on most things. And in addition to being a tremendous organizer, you're also an attorney. Can you give us some of the legalities of what SB 731 will mean?
For sure. And I just want to lift up all the work that Sheila has done on behalf of BLM on this bill. I wouldn't still be standing if it weren't for Sheila. It's been really grueling trying to get this passed. And so I just appreciate her and the team that surrounds her and the work that she's done representing on this bill. A couple of things to just get at the types of officers that we're really trying to address with SB 731. There's like 3 main categories of concern, right? One, there's officers who are fired from an agency for violating policy and then picked up by another agency with lower standards. You know, we see that happening all the time, and there are certain agencies that are known to be kind of a catch-all. And so if you get fired for violating policy, you can go there and certainly get a job because they'll take any old officer. Category 2, there are officers who are under investigation who resign in lieu of being fired and are then hired by other departments. And the worst thing about it is often the investigatory file doesn't exist for those folks because the police department will say, hey, we know what you've done. We're going to investigate you and find out. Why don't you save us a bunch of time, energy, and money and just quit right now? And we'll spare you the results of this investigation. And so they resign, and then they're able to go get a job somewhere else, and they don't carry around in their jacket the offense that they are known by their department to have committed. And then the third category is there are departments who don't fire their agents for violating policy, right? You know, you can, I won't name the department, but due to the SB 1421, the police records bill, we found out recently that there was an officer in a nearby department who had committed several sexual assaults while doing traffic stops, and the department hadn't decided to take action against him. And so the other thing that a decertification agency would be able to do would be look into instances like that and punish these officers and ultimately decertify them for the actions that their agency was unwilling to do.
Great, and I know Sister Fuzia has 5 other children that she needs to get to. So we just want to send you love, Sister Fuzia, and say thank you for making the time. I know it's been a very difficult day, and know that our hearts are with you, our spirits are with you, and you know, we call each other besties. So I'm gonna call you a little later, okay? And make sure.
I love you guys, and thank you so much. I appreciate you having me, and thank you, Melina, and thank you, everyone. It really means a lot to me.
We love you.
Sending you love, Sister Fuzia.
I love you guys as well, and thank you. Like I said, it means a lot to me, and I'll be talking to you soon, Melina, and thank you, Mr. Bradford, as well.
My pleasure. Sorry we have to do this.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sister Fuzia.
Okay.
So the rest of us are going to stay on and finish talking about this bill. We also want to uplift what it means that families are forced to fight for justice in this way. And so, you know, it's inhumane that after the life has been stolen, after Kenneth's character has been assassinated, now she has to struggle for justice in the name of her son. And it's important that all of us continue to fight on her behalf. She's had a terrible day. And, you know, we're grateful that some of us are able to stand in the gaps and that she can see that the work is moving. This is how we demonstrate our love for our community. And so, again, James, I'd love for you to just kind of jump back in and explain just in very clear terms what it means to decertify, what it means to decertify. So does this mean that people like Michael Robbins, who we think was fired from the city of Orange, right, would not have been able to get a job with the city of Gardena PD and kill again? Does this mean that there would have been a pause? I think about people like Eden Medina, who killed Omar Gonzalez and then 12 days later was left on the streets to murder 14-year-old Jesse Romero. Would this bill, would the passage of this decertification bill have intervened in those killings?
Without a doubt. But go ahead.
Yes, as the senator said, without a doubt, if you're the two main triggers for this bill and for decertification currently are if you're fired for what's called serious misconduct, which is a category that almost certainly includes the events that you just described. And then also if there's a civil suit where the result of the civil suit is a finding, like for instance, of wrongful death or use of excessive force against an officer, then that will trigger a decertification investigation at the post level as well. And so while the details aren't ironed out yet, that's exactly the purpose of the bill, is to address directly the situations you just described. And as the bill is currently formulated, it does directly address those situations.
Senator Bradford, did you want to respond to that as well?
I totally agree with what James just stated, and it's our goal to capture these bad actors, because again, right now in California, you can be fired from an agency, or as James stated, you can resign before a conclusion has been finalized in a conduct report, and you're allowed to be hired by another agency here in the state of California. And far too often, these individuals will repeat these egregious, horrible acts, you know, from department to department. So the point of SB 7331 is to make sure that that doesn't happen. You also mentioned the records bill that my colleague Nancy Skinner, who's the chair of public safety, authored. 1421, I believe, is the bill number that was passed 2 years ago. We have police stations who 3 months before that bill was enacted got rid of their records, knowing that we were supposed to be able to review these records. They got rid of the records 3 months before the bill was enacted in January of last year. So it's a lot of issues that we need to deal with when it comes to law enforcement and holding them accountable. And this is a measure, again, that will clearly let us examine the history, the pattern of officers' behavior, but again, make sure that they're not hired by another agency, because in the Department of Vallejo, they've killed 19 individuals since 2010. That's almost 2 a year, and not a single officer has lost their job because of that.
Right. And Vallejo is a city much smaller than Los Angeles, because people in Los Angeles are going, well, they kill 20-something people a year in LA, but Vallejo is a small city, right? And so when you talk about killing that number of people, we know that we have many repeat offenders in Vallejo and in Los Angeles, and clearly in Gardena as well. So what is happening? What's the status of the bill. I know Aloe, so we have joining us Aloe Blacc, and people are going, I thought you were a singer. You are a singer, but you're also, I don't know, you know, I hear your songs, but I also see you in the streets all the time. So I'm going, maybe you have a dual position, right?
Well,
What brought you into this? And I know that you have some ideas for us around how we can move this bill forward, because just because Steve Bradford had the courage to author the bill, just because Black Lives Matter and APTP and ACLU and Youth Justice Coalition are pushing the bill doesn't mean the bill will pass. The way we passed SB 1421, which was the very first bill that Black Lives Matter ever co-sponsored, along with APTP and ACLU and all of the other organizations that are also on this bill, right? Or many of the other organizations, was not just through, you know, a process, but also through engaging our folks, right? Engaging people on the ground. So Aloe, if you could just, one, welcome, but two, if you could also just kind of give us an idea of where we are with this bill and what people can and should do.
yes. So right now the bill has passed in the Senate. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the California Senate has passed.
It hasn't.
Not passed in the Senate yet. Right now it's under review in the Public Safety Committee within the Assembly. And since it's there in this review, there are a lot of things that happen in the Public Safety Committee, a lot of interests that have to be met, and the bill has not come out of public safety. In order for it to move along, they have to finish their review. So what we need to do is we need to encourage our Assembly people to work on this right now, immediately, fastidiously. And the chair of the Public Safety Committee is Assemblyman Reggie Jones Sawyer. And I think if we, encourage Assemblyman Jones Sawyer with tweets, with emails, with phone calls, and the rest of the folks on the committee, like Tom Lackey and Miguel Santiago, Sydney Kamlagar, it would be helpful to let them know that we are watching, that we are waiting, and that we are eager to have this bill passed as soon as possible so that there can be justice for future citizens, and there's decertification of police officers who are engaging in misconduct repeatedly.
Thank you, Aloe. And Senator Bradford, can you help us understand both the process, but also why is this being held up? I don't understand. I see my Assembly member's name on that list of one of the folks who has not support. I'm in Sydney Kamlager's district, right? I know Reggie Jones Sawyer. These are Black legislators. What's happening? It seems to me that political games are being played. I don't understand why this is not just a done deal. It seems like a piece of just commonsensical, humane legislation. Why would we want police who've killed people, police who've been fired, or police who've been forced to resign to stay on, to be eligible to still be cops?
You asked a great question. This bill was scheduled to be heard in Assembly Public Safety last week. When we returned to Sacramento last Monday, we were notified at the last minute that it was pulled back into rules. So it's no longer in public safety. It is in the control of rules. Rules set bills for hearing. So we're mystified and miffed by why this bill at the last minute, a bill clearly that the governor has signaled that he wants, clearly that the Legislative Black Caucus is one of our 10 priority police reform bills, criminal justice reform bills, is at the top of our list. We're wondering what's happening. So we're asking folks to call the Assembly folks, call our speaker, and just find out why the bill was pulled back in the rules. We're in good, earnest negotiations right now with not only the governor's office, and working on language with public safety's committee working on language. But until the bill is released out of rules, it's just talk. So that's the pressure that we need to do right now, of saying release the bill out of rules so it can be heard, be set for a hearing. Because understanding our legislative year is over on August 31st. So we literally have a week left to move this bill through both houses because it has not been heard in my house. We're starting it in the assembly. It's what we call a gut and a man. We picked up a vehicle that we had over there. We inserted this language, and now we needed to move through the assembly house to get over to the Senate and get it to the governor's desk. So we're the clock is running, and we need to get it done. So whatever you can do. Sydney Comlager is on board with this. I know the chair of public safety is on board with it. The Legislative Black Caucus, I mean, it's 10 of us, 8 are in the assembly. They all support this bill. So we just need to apply pressure where it needs to be to move this bill forward.
So who should we be calling? Who should we be calling? If there's one call to make, what is that?
The rules chair, the speaker's office. I mean, even the governor's office.
Is the speaker, right?
I'm sorry?
Rendon is the speaker?
Yeah.
Rendon's office. Who's the rules chair?
Assemblyman Cooley. We just need the bill set. Cooley, from Sacramento. We just need the bill set. And I believe if we set the bill, we agree on, I think we're in agreement with language. We've done a lot of work. My staffer, Chris Morales, has done a yeoman's job and being in direct communication with both the Assembly, Public Safety Chair and that committee, as well as the governor's office. We've even been in negotiation with our Attorney General, Javier Becerra, and how do we, parse this and get a bill that everybody can live with. And we're close to landing the plane. We just now need to get the language agreed upon and move it out of rules and back to public safety and get it through both houses.
Great.
And we have 2 weeks to do that.
We have 2 weeks to do that. So that can be a good thing as well, because if we know that it's a finite period of time, we know the struggle won't take forever, but we need to struggle hard for the next 2 weeks. Is that what I'm hearing?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Like I said, due to this COVID-19, we've had a truncated legislative year. We've lost almost 4 months of what would have been opportunities to hear bills, to move them, fix them, do all this. We're now down to 2.5 weeks to move what the Assembly now has, close to 300 bills in our house, and we have 170 bills over in their house. So, and this is one of those.
Sister Sheila, did you want to add something? I saw you come off mute.
Oh, no, that was actually sort of an accident. Sorry.
Can you talk about the work, though, that's been done so far? And also, I want to uplift that this is work that you're doing, but this is actually not your job, right? So this is what we call our sacred duty. This is the work that we put in because we believe Spirit demands it. Can you talk for us a little bit about the work that's been put in so far and how organizations are important partners with legislators?
Absolutely. So the work of organizations is incredibly important, especially grassroots organizations, because oftentimes we've had many phone calls with many different government entities, and although they have valuable insight, they aren't working directly with families and impacted people. So when they're not working with the families, they don't know the things that the families holds really valuable and the things that they think are important. And so oftentimes their voice is left out of the conversation. The governor's office doesn't know what's important to a family when it comes to decertification, nor does the Attorney General's office or Post or any of these other different entities that we've been on phone calls with, which James, I heard what you said and I appreciate it, and right back at you, because we have been on at least 3 phone calls every day for the last, what I'd say like 3 weeks, if not longer. And the role of organizations in this process is bringing families' voices to that. Oftentimes it's really hard for families to be in those spaces. So we always take things back to the families and get their input, and then we represent their voice on these calls so that they're not having to be on these calls and have to deal with the additional trauma of having to be in negotiations around some of these things that they find incredibly important that they hold dear.
Thank you for that, Sister Sheila. James, is there anything you'd like to add around the importance of organizing for legislation? You're still on mute.
Yes, just underscoring what Sheila said. It's very difficult to maneuver in the Capitol as the Anti-Police Terror Project. And so when we find an organization like Black Lives Matter LA, who we can move with, they can't isolate our voice as APTP as some radical Black organization. They understand that that we're representing the voice of our people and the voice of our communities. And so I know we've all been the one Black person in the room trying to make a statement, and how difficult that is, and how much easier it is when there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And so I know it's been my work, and I see Sheila doing the same work, to make sure that our people are taking up space and demanding space at the Capitol, especially when issues that are primarily Black issues are on the table.
Right. Senator Bradford, as a legislator, is this the first time you've worked as closely as this with community organizations, or do you do this generally?
I do it just about on everything I've ever done as a local elected official, and now as both in the Assembly and the Senate. You don't get heavy lifts done without community support. So whether it's I did judicial discretion on gun use a number of years ago, cannabis laws that we have now, social equity we passed. It was grassroots support that helped us do that. So I'm always honored to be uplifted by organizations such as yours to help move the legislative process forward. You're vital to it. And I would wish a lot of folks understood the power of the advocacy in helping move legislation here in this state and in this country.
Thank you. And Aloe, I just want to ask you why you feel called to do this work, because you could just be an artist, right? But I think that one of the things I know about you and your wife, Maya, is I see you constantly ascribing to this idea that artists have to be the conscience of, our world. And it's important. One of my favorite books is a book by Richard Eiton called In Search of the Black Fantastic. And he talks about the role of artists as embedding political messages into their work, using their platforms to uplift political messages and messages of liberation, and then also supporting financially and in kind work for freedom struggle. And so we see you all presenting yourselves in all of those ways. What made you feel called to do this kind of work as an artist?
As an artist, it's a sense of the responsibility to community. It can't just be artists being self-centered and only caring about our own achievements. We cannot succeed unless our community is succeeding. That's the way that we process life, my wife and I. And we follow in the footsteps of artists like Paul Robeson, who says that the artist is the gatekeeper of truth, and we must speak truth to power. Follow in the footsteps of Harry Belafonte, who was instrumental artist within the civil rights movement, and there are so many others that I think about. And when I listen to an artist like Bob Marley, he wasn't just a singer, he was singing the revolution, and he was also fighting the revolution. So I look up to these kind of artists, and I feel like this is my path. I must walk it, and I have to be adjacent to and in step with the organizations that are doing the work so that I can magnify their voices if possible.
Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate you constantly magnifying voices, but also having a voice of your own. And that's a great lead-in, actually. I'd love if you would be willing to offer something, because one of the things that I know that we experience is sometimes the struggle gets really heavy. You know, the struggle can be really heavy, and we're weighed down by process. Like, you know, when I hear Senator Bradford describe what has to happen, right, it feels daunting. And I think that art speaks directly to our souls and serves as soul food for us. So I'm wondering if you'd be willing to bless us with something to feed our souls, to help us to commit to the struggle tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And this goes out to the movement for Black Lives, to Black Lives Matter, and all those who are part of the struggle, the accomplices, the allies, and the frontliners. Thank you.
Get on down, get on down, hey! Get on down. You got to get on down, get on down, hey! Get on down. Come on and get on down, get on down, hey! Get on down. You got to get on down, get on down,
Black is beautiful.
get on down.
Black is what it is, little kids.
Black is beautiful.
Black is what it is, little kids.
Black is beautiful.
Black is what it is, little kids.
Black is beautiful.
So put your head up, stand tall. Together we rise, divided we fall. Black is beautiful, from the motherland to the new world, to everywhere in between. From the slave ships and the cotton fields to the radio and TV screen. From the back of the bus up to the White House, from the bottom to the top of the class. You can't keep us out, it's no doubt that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. We got a whole lot of soul. Don't hold it back, don't try to control. And just in case you didn't know, I got to tell you, black is beautiful. Black is what it is, little kids. Black is beautiful. Black is what it is, little kids. Black is beautiful. Black is what it is, little kids. Black is beautiful. Put your head up and stand tall. Together we rise, divided we fall. Black is beautiful. So that's one that I'll send out to all the folks in the struggle. Black is beautiful.
I love that. I haven't heard that before. I love that. So now you got to come to one of the protests and make these Black Lives Matter Youth Vanguard kids be your backup singers.
For sure.
We got to close out a protest with that. That was uplifting. That was soul music. Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
And after we get this bill passed, we're going to have him at Raleigh Park for the 18th annual Gardena Jazz Festival, and he's going to do that number there.
Certainly.
There we go. There we
There
go.
we have it. There we have it.
There we go. There we go. So I just want to thank everybody who's bared with us tonight through all the technical difficulties. We're going to get this posted. Thank you, Senator Bradford, for your vision with this bill. Thank you, Sister Sheila and Brother James, for being willing to do so much work on behalf of our people. I see your call schedules, right? I see your Zoom schedules, and it's crazy and it's worth it. And so we're so grateful to you for constantly doing this work. To Brother Aloe, thank you for being in the midst of all of the struggles. Thank you for lending your voice literally. Thank you to Maya. Please give her my love. Give your children our love as well, because they're loaning you to us as well. And I want to thank AS Pro Bono interpreters, which are online as Pro Bono ASL. Brother Neil, thank you. I see Rory here, but I didn't see her moving tonight. But Rory, thank you so much for being on This Is Not a Drill. Oh, I see you. I thank you so much for doing this for us every week. Thank you to Philip and Megan for having our backs and for, trying to wade us through the technical difficulties, but we got it. We're recording it and it'll be online when it's meant to be online. Thank you, Chris, from Steve Bradford's staff, for constantly doing work with us. Please join us again next week, prayerfully by next Thursday, we'll work it out and we'll be live on This Is Not a Drill right here on Facebook.com/BLMLA. Anybody who wants to know what we're up to, please go to BLMLA.org or follow us on social media. On Twitter, we're BLMLA. On Instagram, we're BLM Los Angeles, and we will see you in the struggle.